Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Christmas special of the Project Flux podcast. This is being released on Boxing Day, so a lot of people will be listening to this on Boxing Day. So we hope you had a very Merry Christmas, a fantastic day. We're recording this just before, so we still got all the excitement about the big day. And we're going to keep this one really brief, aren't we, Yoshi? Because we know that people have got family to see and things to do. So we're just going to have a very, very quick roundup. But how are you, Yoshi? You excited for Christmas?
I'm excited for Christmas, mate, and I'm excited for New Year's. So we're in the sweet spot in between.
We are, and we're going to try and keep things on the roads over the course of the next couple of weeks. We got this very quick sort of hello, Merry Christmas special today. Next week we're going to look into our predictions for 2025 along with the newsletter. But we really couldn't let today pass, even though we know a lot of people are going to be busy with family and stuff, simply because we got a very, very interesting Christmas present from OpenAI, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and I was thinking, can we go this week without not releasing an episode? But this could be a major hallmark in human history. So I think we have to cover
We,
this week.
we have to really, don't we? We can't let this one go. And I think what we'll do is to do it justice, we'll cover it in a bit more detail next week. But we just wanted to let people know what OpenAI released on the final day of was it the 12 days of shipments, wasn't it?
Yeah, 12 days of shipments. Yeah.
So do you want to sort of enlighten the listeners as to what's just come out of the woodwork
Yeah,
from OpenAI?
yeah. So OpenAI have just revealed O3, which is touted to be the most powerful LLM in existence today. It is part of their own model series, and like you mentioned, James, it is also part of the biggest reveal, the grand finale of the 12-day shipments announcement series they were doing this month. Now, this flagship model, the crazy thing about it is people are saying that it is AGI. People are arguing that it isn't. But the main reason why people are saying that it's AGI or that it represents a big step towards AGI is because of how well it's performing against some of these performance benchmarks, right? So whenever we test, I say whenever big test or any sort of company developing these AI models are testing the intelligence of these models, they will use these industry benchmarks, which are sets of questions which assess the performance of these models against different criteria, right? So that can be numerical reasoning, verbal reasoning, logical deduction, abstract reasoning, pattern recognition, all these different things, right? Anything which a human can typically do, it will try to assess the AI against that if it can do it or do it better, right? Now, to give you some context, the reason why people are saying that it is AGI is because of how well it's doing on a benchmark called ARC AGI.
Mm.
The ARC AGI benchmark measures abstract reasoning, which is a key fundamental strength of humans, logical deduction, problem solving, and then pattern recognition. The average of a human in completing this task is a performance of 85%.
Mm-hmm.
This new O3 model is completing it at 87.5%. So it's a lot better than the average human, right? Now, bring that onto maths. It was scoring 25.2% on frontier math, a benchmark which was previously considered impossible for AI to solve effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then equally on, I think it was the SWE benchmark, which is software engineering, and that gives you an indication of how well the model can perform on software engineering tasks, which also are quite indicative of what a software engineer would do in the real world, right? So they tried to give it that external validity. It was scoring amongst the top 175 programmers globally, right?
Wow.
So it can
Wow.
do all of these things at a very high level beyond human capability. So then the argument is why is this not AGI?
And
And the argument is with a lot of these benchmark tests, they have been vulnerable to data contamination on some. They would argue that the ARC AGI hasn't been contaminated. And this is basically whereby the model is trained on the answers as well. So it has a bit of a hint at the cheat sheet. Also, are benchmarks themselves too specialized? I mean, you can develop an LLM to smash a benchmark. It doesn't mean that it'll perform on another one more effectively. So, for instance, on ARC AGI 2, it actually performed just 30%. So, is the next model then going to be trained to then defeat this or beat this benchmark specifically? Because the idea of AGI is it being general intelligence. It has to do it ubiquitously.
over every kind of domain and every kind of knowledge base.
Exactly, and you want to
Yeah.
minimize the threat of overfitting the models, etc., etc. The other thing and just to give you some more context on that, with the ARC AGI benchmark, there's a few hundred tasks on visual spatial reasoning, right? So it's the ability to map or understand the position of something spatially in a visual scene. So you might have and they actually show it within the example. If you have like a grid and you've got some blocks colored in, that will be the input. And on the next one, the blocks will change, but it will change through a pattern, right? So you have to infer what's causing that pattern change. And the O3 model was still struggling with some of these questions, which I would say that a teenager or someone younger could solve effectively.
Yeah, so it's good in a wide variety of things, but there's certain things that it still can't get close to, or close, but it still can't outdo humans on, which leads people to say, well, it's not quite there yet. But I think with all of this, it's kind of irrelevant because we're getting so close now. So there's a graph that we'll try and put in the show notes that shows the progression of these ArcAGI scores. And, GPT-4 was at about, I don't know, about 10% or something. And then O1 it went over the 25%. And then O1 Pro, it was over 50%. But these are being released so quickly. All of these have been released in the course of 2024. In 2024, we've had GPT-4o, we've had O1 Preview, O1, O1 Pro, and now we've got O3. There's a tuned low and a tuned high one. And the jump up on each of these is massive. So the difference between O1 Pro was that AGI score of around 50%, and O3, where, as you said, it was about between 75 and 85%. That's huge. That's a huge exponential growth in capabilities.
It's huge. And people would say, but there's still the practical constraint around, the financial cost. So some of these tasks can cost up to like $3,000 per task to compute to get to a high level of performance. However, Moore's law for everything, the big tech aren't too concerned about it because the prices will drop down. But in its very state, though, this model is only open to safety researchers, and it makes it harder for the end consumer to get hold of.
So can we stick there for a minute? So they've only released it, I mean, it was the big finale of the 12 days of shipments, but it was not really giving it to the public. They're just giving it to people for safety features. So two questions there. They obviously are worried about it enough that they want to get it tested. And number two, who are these people who are going to be testing it?
So it must be within OpenAI's internal team itself and those who they're collaborating with. They have to have some engagement with the US and the UK safety institutes, as we mentioned before. That was something which they were, heavily invested in. But they've introduced a new form of alignment, which is called deliberative alignment, right? And it's a training protocol to enhance the model's safety and alignment to human values, right? So it's in the same cloth of which what Anthropic are doing, right? In terms of they are now worried about these capabilities of these models. So they're introducing these more safety protocols. So what will happen here is there'll be initial training. The model is first trained to be helpful without incorporating any safety constraints, right? Then those safety constraints or those specifications are then brought in. And then the model has to then use chain of thought reasoning to reference that safety specification outlined, right? And then there'll be some level of supervised tuning so that it can better establish these as its common thought processes when it comes to answering some of these questions. It would then rely on post-training mechanisms like reinforcement learning to them, okay, this is the right thing for you to do. Let's encourage that behavior and penalize this behavior.
Which is how the transformers work generally, isn't it? So there's no fundamental difference in how they're sort of building it. It's just that it's so much more powerful.
Yeah, and the main bet on what is squeezing the enhanced performance from this model is effectively reinforcement learning on chain of thought to scale inference compute. And to put it simply, for me, that is giving the model more time to think effectively.
Yeah. So with this model, are we getting close to what the great promise of AI has been around it being able to carry out most tasks that a human could do?
Yes, but I would still say that it isn't completely generalized.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it's completely generalized because I still think there is a level of transfer learning whereby on tasks which are completely unrelated, it will still struggle. And I'm giving you an example, right? This model is performing well on tasks which have an objective outcome. So like playing a game or, a software engineering task or also a numerical reasoning task, right? There is an objective.
So a mathematical task or a chemistry kind
right.
of
It's yes or
equation,
no, or correct or false, or, correct or wrong or right or wrong. However, it didn't actually do much better than GPT-4o on verbal reasoning tasks from what I'd seen.
Right.
right?
Okay.
Because the output itself then is subjective. If you're to write a poem or a piece of art or something or a story, who's to say if it is good or bad, right?
Yeah, because that's subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, it's subjective, right? So it typically relies on the reader.
So what does it not perform much better in those kind of scenarios from what you've
No,
seen?
no, 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 nowhere
Okay.
near in terms of the enhanced performance it shows on some of these other benchmarks.
So for people in, project management, project delivery of different kind of projects, do you think this will have an impact on what they do? Or is it remains to be seen? Because until we get our hands on it, we're just inferring, aren't we?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It depends on the uncertainty around projects. Like, there's so many different variables that are involved, and humans are a big part of that. So the models themselves have to improve in how they understand human behavior. So, for instance, right, emotional intelligence. These things struggle with emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is a big thing within projects.
Yeah. But I wonder if, as these get the reinforcement learning gets added to these models and they become more and more mature, whether that starts being able, it gets better at being able to detect those kind of signs of emotional intelligence, because you can still kind of link it to raises in voice, especially for multimodal, the way that words are said, the way that certain things are written. So I'm wondering if actually it's going to help have improve that performance, maybe not straight away, but as it starts learning more and more, it's going to have the ability to do that.
And also what you just mentioned there, multimodal, it doesn't have multimodal inputs, right? So it has to be also be able to process, understand, and infer from
Mm.
multimodal inputs, which I think will lend to it having that ability to understand emotional intelligence, because you have to have all these different, we use our different senses, right, as humans. I think that'll be the same thing. Now, another thing to mention I found out quite interesting is the O1 model doesn't actually perform that well with the level of precision you want to imbue within an agent, right? So GPT-4o is very easy, not easy, it's easier to fine tune a system prompt, for instance, to get a certain output.
Mm-hmm.
These more advanced models aren't as specific. So for me, there's a slight dichotomy because, OpenAI are focusing on agentic workflows themselves, but they also have, more general, stronger LLMs with more advanced reasoning. They haven't yet, for me, coupled the two of them together, A, because of the costs. Like, if you have cognitive architectures within agentic workflows that are quite costly, they're quite big, and the cycles are running consistently, that's going to drive up. So it's going to be so expensive to run
Yeah,
that.
but there's no point in using those kind of models for relatively simple tasks. It's like a sledgehammer to crack a nut, isn't it? So I think it's going to be, as we've said, that you're going to choose the model for the task. I think what might happen is that it will start detecting, because for the average user, I suppose, going in and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to need O1 for this. I'm going to need O3 for this." That's not going to happen. But could you see a point where you go into ChatGPT and you give it your prompt, and from the prompt it will detect what the best model is to use on that prompt?
Yeah, I think that should come naturally because
I
they
hope so, because
because
that
they
seems
know the
really
model more than
obvious.
anyone else do. Yeah, exactly. I mean, as someone who's providing the service, you want to provide the model which is going to be best for what the user asks for. If that's latency, they want a quicker answer. There's no point in using O1 Preview if you want a quick answer, right? Use a quicker model like the O1 Mini. But I think because they're releasing so many different models with different capabilities and used for different use cases, I think they need to be the ones which it's a bit like choice architecture. They need to be able to architect that choice for the user.
Mm-hmm.
Use the O1 mini model if it needs some level of reasoning, but it needs to be quicker. Or use GPT-4 if it needs to use the internet or provide or work with multimodal inputs. I think it needs to be the one that dictates that, because right now it's quite difficult to use that interface. But another thing to mention what this means for me, right, is now I think it adjusts the timeline for AGI massively. I mean, I was
Massively,
optimistic.
massively.
I did think a couple of years. I think much closer than most.
Well, it was only how many episodes ago? 3 episodes ago, where we were having those kind of debates about, is it 10, 15 years? It feels like it's a lot closer than that now.
Yeah, it's a lot closer. And these O series models are being brought out every couple of months.
I know. That's what I'm saying. This timeline is just insane. And it does worry me to some extent from what we've talked about before. Is this just an arms race? But it also worries me from the overwhelm side of things, because it must be difficult for people to understand what's going on if they're not in this space. Um, I thought it was quite interesting that it didn't really make the mainstream media, the O3 model. It was kind of tucked away. because I think that they don't see, the mainstream media don't see it as a story for the average consumer, because it's getting quite technical now, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not like when ChatGPT came out for the first time, there was a great story around that, because it was the first time we had something that we could really kind of converse with. Now these kind of really fine-tuned, extremely high-performing models, these very good with reasoning, I'm guessing that, how do you get a headline out of that?
yeah. I think that the shift is more so going to be something which rumbles underneath. I don't think people are going to see a, a huge change until we start seeing it within hardware, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Until we
Yeah.
start seeing it within robots, which, by the way, Unitree, you can buy a Unitree robot now, which is deployed, which is, I think, it's the dog one, which can actually be used to a consumer for like 130K.
It's crazy.
So until we can start to use these things, I see within our own vision and we can sense it, I don't think we're going to notice it much if it's brought within, kept just within our hardware. So I think robots will be the key
Yeah.
thing.
Well, thank you, OpenAI, for releasing this just before Christmas, because it does mean it's probably going to change some of our predictions that we're going to talk about next week on the show. So it's definitely going to give me some food for thought over Christmas whilst I'm tucking into my turkey as to what this means. Is this the last Christmas where we're the most intelligent species on the planet? There's a question.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And then people are also saying to software engineers they might be out of a job because of how well these things are performing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there's two sides to the same coin, because when you look deeper into it, there are some, when you have so much code to work with, the context window might also run out. So it then starts to lose its train of thought in that sense. So you didn't have to have that capability. So there's always two sides of the same coin. It's too early to tell right now, and because people haven't got access to it, in the public, to be able to assess these things through a widespread review, I think I think that itself also prevents it being headline news.
Yeah, I see. But for anyone who's interested, stay tuned to the show. We'll bring you all the information as and when we get it. And I think the big question that will really define whether it is an AGI or not is if it can answer the question of why nobody has the bounties out of the celebration box at the end of Christmas.
I would take the bounty outside the celebration.
You're a bounties fan, are you?
You like a bounty?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I think we're going to leave it there, just because I think there's only so much AI you can listen to on Boxing Day, and as I said, you've probably got turkey to get back to and lots of bounties that are left over. So make your way through that. But we'll be back next week with the sort of prediction 2025 show. And all that's left to be said is Merry Christmas. Hope you have a fantastic time with your family. Thank you again for all your support over the year. And we are seriously excited for 2025, because, if this is the shape of things to come, then I think we're going to be in for a very, very busy time in 25. Aren't we, Yoshi?
100%. I've never been so confident that I'll be super busy with this stuff.
Cool. Well, take care, everyone. Have a great holiday. See you soon.
Snow is softly falling round, sleigh bells ringing in joyful sound, wishing all the season bright, and Project Flux in every light. Merry AI Christmas, dear friend. Let the warmth of cheer descend. Glistening streets, oh, what sight.